When I was an intern at Nickelodeon Studios, I always used to view the cartoon before everyone else did, just to make sure if it was okay and there was no flaws or anything that had happened. It was a new episode of The Fairly Odd Parents, and it was the one called Power Pails, Emotion, Commotion. I had started the episode, and this episode seemed to be pretty good, no flaws whatsoever. So when I took it into the room for everybody to see, I didn't expect anything to happen other than what I had seen. Boy, I was wrong. We went to the room and started the tape. I walked out a few minutes because I was expecting a call from the manager. He wasn't there that day because he was at a meeting. He called and we talked about business for about a half hour. I came back in. Everybody looked at me, some questioningly and some angrily, and I don't know what was going on. They put in the tape and took a while to load, but when it did, the title card came up as Timmy's Wish, surrounded by missiles, nuclear warheads, military tanks, landmines, and radiation symbols. I know that was not what I named it, so I was confused just as well. The show started off with Timmy in his bedroom, once again being babysat by Vicky for 4 days, as his parents were out of town. She had locked him into his own room. The windows were shut tight. The door was barricaded and there was nowhere to go. He was bored, so he was developing cabin fevers. So Timmy just sat on his bed talking to Cosmo and Wanda. I wish I had lots of video games, toys, and Crimson Chin comics, Timmy shouted. Cosmo and Wanda gave him all that he asked for. Wanda replied, Timmy, have you ever thought of wishing for world peace? It's worth a try. Now, I was really confused because I had never written any of this, so I thought I had pulled a prank on me. Someone had pulled a prank on me and had to change disc to whatever they had. Anyway, Timmy replied, No, but I just thought of something I wish I had. The audio after that was cut out, almost as it was censored, but Timmy was mouthing the words, something to create chaos. And then there was the poof cloud, and Timmy had a bunch of knives in various sizes. Thanks, he replied gratefully before he quickly fell asleep. Cosmo and Wanda were confused by what they had just granted and asked themselves, why would he need a box of knives? Then they fell into his fishbowl as the goldfish went to sleep, but I was too confused by now to think at all. But I kept watching. The next scene showed Timmy all suddenly waking up, jumping out of bed, out of the window, which was now open for some reason, but it looked like it was forced open and fade into darkness. 2 hours later, time card came up. He came back with a weird dark red liquid on his body, but it was too dark to see anything, including his face. The way we knew it was a liquid because there was drops around him and trickling down his face and his body in tiny red streams. Anyway, he broke open the floor, went to the bathroom, cleaned off the liquid, and went back to bed and fell asleep. The next scene made me gag. It was Francis drenched in the pool in his own blood and his face cut open. His brains and his eyes were removed with very little precisions, and his tongue was ripped out. He had multiple bruises on his neck, leading us to conclude that he was choked to death first on his stomach and carved into the bloody skin where the entrails T.T. The picture looks so realistic. It was sickening just looking at his carcass. As known, Timmy's entrails were T.T, so we could guarantee it was him. A couple interns left while the others stay. The second scene, holy shit, was even worse than the last scene. The head had been crudely chopped off with its arteries and veins just jutting out still. The arms and legs had been slit open with the blood vessels piled on top. Hands and feet cut off, and the same entails on the stomach. His ribs, by the looks of it, were broken with a sledgehammer, and blood from the newborn holes in his lungs were seeping out. My guess was his ribs were broken at first and suffocated because of it. He was cut up. This person was without a doubt Mr. Crocker. You know it was Timmy. He seems to be two victims were Timmy's enemies. The pictures were so realistic, more people ran out, just leaving 4 others in the room. Then it was morning, and Timmy woke up. The eyes were drenched in blood on the moon. And on the news, murders committed that Timmy committed were then featured. Cosmo and Wanda looked at the news and then looked at Timmy. There had been no suspicions it was him, so they had nothing to worry about. It went on a regular day, of course, except of course, without bowling instead. There was a substitute until there was a new teacher. Then it was reached nighttime. The fairies went to bed. So did Timmy. Right now, I was nervous. The entire episode had been like this, and was now almost over. Timmy came back with more blood than ever on him. Now, would know it's blood and a couple of scars. He cleaned himself and went to bed. The next day, Vicky was on the news, and the picture was so horrifying. I lost my lunch. She had been brutally tortured with whips and chains, and her whole body had been cut up to pieces, with body parts laying around all over the place, and it was so realistic I couldn't hold it anymore. Nobody suspected that a 10-year-old would do this, so nobody expected him. That night, Timmy was going out onto the window. He saw a bunch of police cars and helicopters. Besides him, Wanda spoke. I know it was you, Timmy. I watched you, and so I called the police. Timmy then sat down, crying dark red mascara ruined tears on his bed. He looked up at the screen, and his eyes were in detail the creepiest you've ever seen. They looked like they were animated heavily, not realistic, but not CGI either. He then whispered on an ominous tone, "Tell no one what I did." He then took a pistol, dropped a folded note, and shot himself in the mouth. When the police broke in, they would open the folded note. It said, "You think I was murdering people? That's small talk. If I was murdering people, you will all be gone." Plus, and the episode shuts off. I didn't want to go grab the disc to see what it looked like, and it was my disc, but somehow it was corrupted and thus was worthless. Still, I was able to see the disc rather than just seeing the episode again, but I don't know why it didn't corrupt the first time it was shown. The creepiest part was that this was my disc. My name, my signature on it, everything. Then, around the time the actual episode aired, of course, I had to redo it. I ran perfectly, no different than what I watched originally. The episode will never be out of my mind. It will never know how it had to be corrupted or who corrupted it. These aren't photos of this episode.